Is it? So, good morning and welcome to the class. Today we'll talk about olefin complexes, and these are complexes where the metal is coordinated to an olefin, a C double bond C unit. I have for you on the screen. Let me change this to a pen. So I have an olefin complex pictured here. The idea is that it is bonded in a eta2 fashion. It's bonded to both carbons equally. So MC distances are same. I'm emphasizing this because there are several complexes where the metal is slightly displaced, and so as long as these two distances are reasonably comparable, we call them olefin complexes. So the structure of these complexes are in such a way that the hydrogens are all equidistant from the metal. So in other words, the metal and the hydrogen, this is the olefin plane and this is the metal. So the hydrogens are also equidistant. It's not bound like this, but it is bound so that the pi bond is facing the metal atom. That is the reason for emphasizing that the hydrogens are also equidistant if it is an ethylene. What we notice from the structures of these complexes is that the carbon-carbon bond is longer than the carbon-carbon bond in the free form. The coordinated olefin has got a longer carbon-carbon bond distance. This bond distance change is not very large. The lengthening in the Zeiss complex is only 3 picometers. Arko, you have a question?
Spectrum down in your book, C4H10O2.
Arko, you're
okay, and you have 2 sets of protons which integrate to 4 and 6.
Arko,
I mean, you can just in your book you can record it.
Yes,
okay.
Sir. Sorry.
Thank you. So, the carbon-carbon bond is only slightly elongated as in the Zeiss complex. The Zeiss complex was the first olefin complex that was studied, but it is not necessarily a classic organometallic olefin. I will explain why this is a unique system. But even in the olefin complex that Zeiss made, the carbon-carbon stretching frequency is about 100 centimeter minus 1 less than what it is in the free form. So ethylene stretching frequency is 1623 centimeter minus 1, and once it is coordinated to the platinum, the stretching frequency decreases to 1516 centimeter minus 1. So this is a drastic drop, whereas the carbon-carbon bond length is not as much increased as the stretching frequency increase. This we have found even in carbon monoxide. The stretching frequency is a more sensitive indicator of the metal-carbon interaction. Okay, so so far what we have discussed suggests that you have some weakening of the carbon-carbon bond, either by stretching frequency measures or by bond distance measures. Now, the Duer-Chat-Duncanson model of bonding, which I have on the screen, is is something that is uh, typical of most olefin complexes, including the Zeiss complex, although like I'm going to explain later, that this is probably a slight difference between the classic olefin complexes and Zeiss complex. Now, there are two electrons present on the pi bond of ethylene. And that is something that is obvious. And these two pi bonds are uh, present on either side. Suppose the olefin is centered on on the Cartesian coordinates. It's at the origin. The origin is placed between the two between the two carbon bonds, between the two carbon atoms. Then you have the pi bond on the z axis, plus z and minus z. You would have a lobe or region of electron density which represents the pi bond. And there is a node right at the place where the carbon and the hydrogens are placed. I'll consistently talk about it as if it is ethylene. So there are 4 hydrogens attached to the 2 carbons. So that is lying on the XY plane, and on the Z axis, the 2 regions of electron density, pi electron density, are present above and below the plane in which the atoms are present. So from that, electron density is donated to the metal orbital. Now, if I place the metal on the Z axis, obviously I should consider the dz squared orbital, which would be oriented along the Z axis on the metal atom. And in most cases, even in the case of CrCO6, we found those are the two orbitals are dx squared minus y squared and the dz squared. Those are the ones which are empty. So that is going to be occupied now, or that's going to be populated now with electron density coming from the olefin pi bond. So electron density is flowing from the olefin pi bond into the empty orbital on the dz squared orbital. So what I want to emphasize is that this is a pi bond. In the olefin, we talk about it as if it is a pi bond. And that is a pi bond because the 2 carbons are having 2 hydrogens, and you can't twist those 2 hydrogens without breaking the pi bond. So that's the reason when you rotate one of the carbons with respect to the other carbon, you will break the pi bond. And that's why it's called, it has pi symmetry. Whereas when you talk about the metal interacting with the pi electron cloud, the metal is sitting on top, the way I have put it on the screen. So however much you rotate the olefin on the XY plane, now I'm keeping the metal constant, fixed, and then I'm moving the ethylene plane. Nothing is going to change as far as this bonding is concerned. So you can rotate as much as you want around this axis, which I have indicated in brown color on the screen, and this electron density flow will not be disrupted. As a result, this is called a sigma bond. So you should not mistake this to be a pi bond just because the donor orbital happens to be having pi symmetry with respect to the ligand, internally with respect to the ligand. So it's a sigma bond that is formed between the pi electron of the ethylene and the empty orbital on the metal complex. So that's why I've put it as sigma symmetry. Now, from theoretical calculations, it is suggested that approximately 0.24 electrons are pumped into the empty orbital of a metal. So this is just one complex that has been taken, but you can see that it's not as if all the pi electron density from the ethylene has been moved to the empty orbital on the metal. So that is why you're not having a weak pi. It's the CC distance is not becoming very, very weak, or it's not becoming very, very long. We'll come to a situation where it becomes significantly longer, but only a small amount of electron density is transferred to the empty orbital. But that is enough of a glue to hold the olefin and the metal together. Now let's proceed. I think I have missed one. 1 second. Let me just see. Um, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So these are things which we discussed. If all that I told you just now, if all that I told you is all that is happening between the metal and the olefin, it should not be a problem to rotate the olefin with respect to the metal. But there is a barrier to rotation of the olefin with respect to the metal. So from NMR spectroscopy, it is seen that although the sigma bond is not broken, it's not possible to always rotate the olefin with respect to the metal. This rotation is not facile in all the cases. In some cases, at room temperature, you have rapid rotation of the olefin. In other cases, it doesn't rotate. So obviously, something more than a sigma bond is formed. And this varies, like I said, for CrCO5 olefin complex, ethylene complex, the energy difference is approximately 7 kilocalories per mole. That's the energy calculated for the transition state for the rotation of the olefin. Okay, so perpendicular it would be lost. So if you rotate one full round, it will come back to a bonding situation. So this there happens to be a pi bond. Now the question is, how do we picture it? And that's where the Dewar-Duncanson model comes in, and find that there is a pi star orbital on the olefin, and this results in a pi orbital which is formed between the metal and the olefin. Now, again, there is a slight discrepancy. As far as the ethylene is concerned, it is a pi star orbital. But as far as the metal olefin bonding is concerned, it is a pi orbital. Why do we say it's a pi orbital? Because it's a bonding orbital, bonding description. Because if you see in the, if you look at the screen, what you find is that there is a, I keep forgetting to change the, yeah, you see that there is a same phase overlap between the metal orbital and the olefin orbital. So remember, this is the orientation in which the olefin is present, and this is our so-called z-axis, and this is our xy plane. And the electron density flow now is coming from the metal, to olefin. So this electron density flow is calculated to be around 0.22 electrons for a typical metal olefin complex. So you have an electron density flow from the ligand to metal, where 0.24 electrons are flowing out, and from the metal to the ligand, 0.22 electrons. So you can see that the net interaction is kind of electroneutral, which means that there is a give and take of electrons. As a result, the metal neither gains electron density significantly nor loses electron density significantly. And that is why this happens to be a synergistic interaction. The more the ligand pushes electron density into the metal, more the metal will push electron density back into the ligand. And this, what is this going to do? That's the question. We are populating pi star orbitals on the ethylene, and so we will weaken the pi bond between the two carbons. So there's a carbon here, there's a carbon here, and this pi bond is weakened between the carbons. But then it strengthens the pi interaction between the metal and the interaction between the metal and the olefin. This is also a pi interaction. This interaction is strengthened. It weakens the pi bond between the carbons. It strengthens the pi bond between the metal and the olefins, right? So this has got pi symmetry, because if you rotate the metal or the olefin, the interaction becomes weaker and weaker, and at 90 degrees rotation, it will be completely lost. So we're only talking about this particular interaction. There's some complication. I will come to that in a minute. So Dewar, Chatt, and Duncanson actually interaction, metal olefin interaction, and their explanation was extremely good. There is a sigma type interaction, there is a pi type interaction. These two interactions are going in opposite directions. Like I said, electron density is from the ligand to the metal in the case of the sigma bond, and in the case of the pi symmetric bond, the interaction electron density is flowing in the opposite direction. Both strengthen the metal olefin bonding, okay, whichever be the direction. So let me just go now, having done a brief discussion about the bonding. There is a lot of work that has been done, because when Dewar, Chatt, and Duncanson proposed this model, it was very unique in chemistry. And so a lot of fundamental work has been done in this area. People have looked at the electron density on the carbon very carefully using photoelectron spectroscopy, etc., etc. And then it is now a well settled, accepted phenomenon that this is the way the metal and the ligand interact. Now, let me take a look at some of the ways by which you can make these olefin complexes. You notice that there is a give and take. So, if you have a very positively charged metal complex, just as in carbon monoxide, the metal is not going to interact strongly with the olefin. Why? Because if the metal is positively charged, then it's going to be reluctant to give back electron density into the olefin. And that is exactly what we found for carbon monoxide also. Because of this give and take, we want the metal in a zero valence state, or we do not want the metal to be ionized very strongly. So the second thing that I have noted here is the general way by which you can make a metal olefin complex. If you start with the metal salt, you would have to reduce the metal salt, M plus salt would have to be reduced plus E and brought to the metal zero state, and the metal zero state will now interact with olefins, right? On the other hand, if I make a metal carbonyl complex, which is already in the zero valence state, then the zero valent metal will not have any problem interacting with an olefin, because the carbon monoxide ligand that is remaining on the metal can have better pi accepting property. So this brings us to this previous debate about how much electron density is going to be accepted, how good a pi acceptor the olefins. Remember, when we talk about this back bonding or this metal to ligand pi interaction that we talked about, metal to, that's not what I wanted to write, metal to ligand pi interaction that we wanted to talk about. This is going to be better if you have a group which is on the opposite side, like a halogen, which will push electron density. right, into the metal orbitals. And then this metal will push it back into the ligand pi orbit, pi star orbitals. So a similar situation is there. If I have a carbon monoxide also wants to pull electron density in the pi system like this. And if L is also going to pull, then there's going to be a competition. So this is what is going to determine whether you can make the metal olefin complex or not, depending on the strength of the pi interactions. Now, so substitution is one way by which you can make a complex. Reduction is a second way by which you can make a complex. We'll see examples of all of these. A third one is metal atom synthesis. Here you vaporize the metal so that you have metal atoms. And that means you have to break all the metal-metal bonds present in the solid state. And then you form an interaction with the ligand. And lastly, we can also add ligand to an unsaturated complex. This is, of course, obvious because when you do the substitution, you're adding it to a vacant site. So this is these are also possible ways by which you can make the complex. Now, let me proceed with the simplest way of making a complex. Unfortunately, this is the simplest and it's also the weakest complex. These complexes are formed between Ag plus or group 10, group 11. Copper, silver, gold. Group 11 metal atoms, metal ions in this case, they are positively univalent, Ag plus, it can be Cu plus also. This can interact with an olefin and form an olefin complex. These complexes are extremely weak. As I just explained to you, the strength of this interaction is weak because the metal is positively charged. It's reluctant to give electron density into the olefin. So this interaction turns out to be weak. And so they form weak complexes. Life is not so simple because if you have a positively charged metal, it is going to accept electron density from the olefin in a better fashion. So although we say that this pi interaction is weak, the sigma interaction is going to be stronger if you have a charge. Okay. A slight extension of the previous method. If you have copper 2 plus, this is copper 2 plus now, you can reduce it with copper metal. Okay, and this would be just a disproportionation reaction. You can do this very conveniently in acetonitrile, CH3CN, because CH3CN stabilizes copper plus. Okay, you can't do this in a completely aqueous medium. Copper perchlorate, monovalent copper perchlorate will disproportionate again to give you copper metal and copper 2 plus. On the other hand, if you add acetonitrile, it will stabilize copper 1 plus. This copper 1 plus can interact with olefins. Now, these are again weak interactions, okay, but nevertheless they form complexes, and in fact the copper complex can be generated in instead of reducing it with copper metal, you can also reduce it with electrochemically, which means you take two, you can even just simple experiment, you can just take two copper electrodes, attach it to a positive and negatively charged the poles of a battery, pass current in the presence of an olefin, and it forms a nice olefin complex with copper 1 plus. Okay, so that's possible. What is the use of these complexes? The use turns out to be that although these are very weak complexes, they cannot be isolated, they cannot be kept in a bottle for a long time, etc. These are valuable because the whole system is in equilibrium. And you can think of separating two olefins based on the strength of this interaction. Based on the strength of this interaction, you can separate two olefins. All you have to do is to take a silica gel column. You take a silica gel column and you coat it with a small amount of silver salt. Okay, and you add a mixture of olefins. These olefins are nicely separated. And the separation turns out to be a function of the stability of the Ag olefin complex. Ag plus is anchored or it is stuck to the silica gel because it's the counter ions are nitrate ions in this case, and they are going to be interacting with the silica network. And so what's going to happen is, based on the strength of this interaction, you're going to have strongly bound olefins stuck on the column. Weakly bound olefins are not going to be stuck on the column, and they're going to come out first. So eluted inversely proportional to this bond strength. Elution time, let's make it elution time. Is proportional to the strength of the complex. No, the other way. Sorry. Elution time is proportional to the strength of the complexes. The longer the time that it takes to elute, the stronger the complex. Okay. So I hope you understand this principle. This is a simple way by which you can use metal olefin complexes in a practical fashion. There are columns, both gas chromatographic and gas chromatographic columns primarily, which separate olefins based on the silver olefin interaction. So here is another example where a stronger reducing agent has been used, but I put up this example because this was done by a person called Jolley, W-L-J-O-L-L-Y. Yes, that's his name. W.L. Jolley, and this person synthesized a lot of nickel olefin complexes, and these olefin complexes had interesting reactions. We'll talk about these reactions later, but unfortunately, they could be generated in a very facile fashion only at very low temperatures. And at low temperatures, reducing agents like ALR3 are still very effective, and ALR3 reduces NiCl2. You might be wondering how it is reducing, because ALR3 is just converted to, is converted to AlCl3. So that's not getting oxidized. ALR3 remains +3 oxidation state. This remains at +3 oxidation state. Nickel is +2 oxidation state. Nickel is 0 oxidation state here. Ethylene has not undergone any change. So what is happening? Actually, it is nickel must be forming NiR2 species within brackets because it's highly unstable, and then the R-R bond is formed, plus nickel 0 must be generated. So this generation of nickel 0 in the presence of ethylene results in the formation of a complex. Notice this complex. What would be the electron count of this complex?
So 16.
16.
Okay.
16.
16 electrons. So it looks like I have to give a few quizzes in class, otherwise all of you will go off to sleep. I heard only two people answering the question, right? Okay, good. Pictured below, you have another system where same principle of reduction has been used, but cyclooctadiene. These two ligands, COD is the diene and COT, which is the tetraene, are very popular in olefin chemistry. We'll encounter them again and again. COD is also a nickel zero complex, but notice here it is a 18 electron complex. So why is it forming a 16 electron complex here and an 18 electron complex in the other case? It's a question. I should have my any hands? Anybody wants to answer why cyclooctadiene forms an 18 electron complex, but ethylene forms a 16 electron complex?
Sir, maybe because in this case you will have to have four coordinations in the because of the chelation. So then the electron count would be more than what like here there's no option for just three ligands to three coordination sites to be occupied like it was in ethylene. So that might be a reason.
Okay, that answer has to be refined a little bit. I will. Anybody else want to reword it?
So maybe if you have four ethylenes, they will be in a square planar geometry where the symmetry of the nickel orbitals would not be sufficient to overlap with the ethylenes. While here we have a tetrahedral geometry where one of the cyclooctadienes is coming from above and below the metal, right? So they have the proper symmetry.
Okay, this is. Let me. I forgot to tell you that this is tetrahedral. That's what you assumed, Shubham, and you're right. This is tetrahedral geometry, which means if I take these points, that's a tetrahedron, okay? Because this complex itself will not have TD symmetry, but it's tetrahedral geometry based on these 4 points of contact with the centers of the olefin. That is correct. And this is actually trigonal. Okay, this is trigonal. So now both of you did not say anything wrong, but then the reason, let's reason this out. Suppose I make a tetrahedral complex with ethylene. I then have to orient 4 ethylenes in this fashion. Okay. This becomes too crowded. This becomes too crowded. Sterically unfavorable. Whereas in this case, because you have tied up the carbons through sigma bonds, you have tied it up using sigma bonds, you have reduced the steric strain. Okay, you have reduced the steric strain, and that is like forming covalent bonds here everywhere. The other two also. and moving it away from interacting with one another. So this becomes barely possible. Here there is electronically favorable, sterically congested, sterically unfavorable. But because you have tied up the carbon-carbon bonds, you actually removed a hydrogen and formed a covalent interaction with the other olefin. You have reduced the steric strength. Now, this is not going to be visible unless I show you some structures. So I will try crystal structures which you can examine on the CIF file and satisfy yourselves that this is in fact the case. But ethylene, if I have ethylene and a tetrahedral geometry, they will come close to each other. Here, partly one of you mentioned it. It is not possible to hold it in that geometry. So I could have made a trigonal complex with this by moving away the two carbons to the other side. Okay, I can just move it away from the metal and it can form a trigonal complex. But I can gain some electronic energy by interacting with the metal. So it's possible. And because the hydrogen is now tied up, it's not possible for it to move around and bump into another ethylene molecule. So that kind of interaction is prevented and that improves it. This is completely unfavorable, the ethylene complex. This is unfavorable but possible. And so electronics win in this particular case. Okay. So let me show you another situation where I have a dicyclopentadienyl cobalt complex. Now tell me, here again I have a question for you. Bis-cyclopentadienyl cobalt, what I want you to do is to put up your hand if you have an answer, and then so that I can, if multiple answers are there, I will be able to, multiple people want to answer, then I will call out the name. Okay. What is the oxidation state, Shubham? Okay. Several of you have put up your hand, but first, Shubham, can you quickly give an answer? Oxidation state? Shubham, you are muted. Huh? I can't hear.
So oxidation state of cobalt will be +1 and the entire complex will be -1.
No, this is +2. Cobalt is +2 here. Okay. Cobalt is +2 because this is a bis-cyclopentadienyl species. So that means 2 Cp minuses are there. This is +2. Okay.
But,
I'll explain. So we are adding potassium, and you please look at the screen. I asked you what is the oxidation state of cobalt in this bis-cyclopentadienyl cobalt. So that is +2. And what is happening is potassium is pumping in 1 electron into this system, and here it is +1. Okay, here it is +1, right? And potassium has become +1, and this was 0 here. Potassium 0 here. So that's how we have balanced the electrons. Now, what is interesting is when you're pumping in electrons into the cobalt complex, one of the Cp minus ligands has gone away, and the intermediate that must have been formed is this intermediate. Okay. So this is a coordinatively unsaturated intermediate, CpCO, that is coordinatively unsaturated, and that would have 5 + 9, 14 electrons only. It can take up another 4 electrons in order to form an 18 electron complex, and that's what it does. Okay, it takes up ethylene, 2 molecules of ethylene, and forms a CpCO CO bis ethylene complex. Now let me show you. I have a structure of the complex with cobalt, and I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can show you this. Are you able to see?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the olefin bis olefin complex. Instead of one hydrogen, I have a SiMe3 group which is located here. Okay, this is silicon. This is the silicon SiMe3, and let's reduce the congestion by saying show hide hydrogen so that you can see it better. Now you can see that there are two olefins, and the two olefins are like if you imagine this to be a seat of a chair, then a seat of a stool, then you have two legs for this stool, and this is of course the cobalt, and you have, this is the way in which it is bound. So you can see that if I show the hydrogens, you can see very easily that in fact these two hydrogens are coming close. If I move these two hydrogens a little bit, this olefin a little bit, if I try to rotate this olefin about this cobalt carbon centroid, then they will bump into each other. So that is why if I have nickel and four of them, then again I will have problems. So even here, if this olefin, if I'm able to rotate it, it will go and bump into these hydrogens. So that is the reason why you cannot form nickel tetraethylene complex. Okay, so the way in which you have to interact the metal with the olefin is such that the pi phase has to be looking at the metal atom. The pi electron density has to be, if I have two olefins, then it has to be like this, where both pi faces are looking at the metal atom at the center, right? So I hope this is clear. Now we'll go back to the. So I have explained where the electron is going. Cobalt 2 plus is reduced to cobalt, and this now has an 18 electron count. That is all explained. A similar situation is there with rhodium chloride, but this time the reaction seems to be happening at reflux temperature in ethanol. Rhodium is rhodium plus 3 here. Rhodium is plus 1 here. So what's the reducing agent? In this case, Shubham, I'm going to give the
methanol.
Sorry, yeah, ethanol is the reducing agent. Ethanol gets converted to CHO, and rhodium gets converted from plus 3 to plus 1. Okay. This is basically plus 2H plus 2E. Okay, if you want to write it, 2H plus, right? 2H plus plus 2E. Okay, so that's how you're balancing the charges and the protons and the electrons in this reaction. So this complex has got rhodium in plus 1 oxidation state. This is a this particular framework is very common. What is happening is the chloride ions are 1 electron donors in the neutral method. They are 1 electron donors on one side and they are 2 electron donors on the other side. Okay, 2 electron donors on the other side. So if I have to put it, if I have to indicate it with number of arrows, I should put it like this actually. 2 electrons on one side and 1 electron on the other side. Then you will get the electron count right for the rhodium complex. Okay, you can work this out for yourself. What would be the electron count? The geometry around this complex is now square planar. Complex is actually D8. Okay, so you can work out what is the electron count. Usually square planar D8 complexes will turn out to be 16 electron complexes. So now I come to the famous Zeiss complex. The Zeiss complex is again, it was synthesized with a slightly higher pressure of ethylene as original synthesis. It was boiled in dilute hydrochloric acid in the presence of ethylene. And this is +2 oxidation state. And here also the platinum is in +2 oxidation state. If you remember the synthetic methods that I just described to you, everywhere there was a reduction involved. In this case, there is no reduction involved. So, there's no reduction involved. And as a result, what is happening is that you have a weak interaction between olefin and platinum. Okay? You have weak interaction between olefin and platinum. So that's the, I was telling you that the Zeiss complex is not as typical as one thinks it is. Zeiss complex involves a very weak interaction between platinum and the olefin. And the second point that I want to want you to notice is that it has a molecule of water in it. The general idea that you have organometallic compounds only in the absence of water is not really right. Water and organometallic compounds get along better than oxygen and organometallic compounds. Here in the crystal structure, one molecule of water was found, and this was the complex that was isolated. So I'm going to discuss the Zeiss complex a little more, little later, but let me proceed. The synthetic methodology that is used is in the last category. Basically, I want to remove, in this particular instance, I want to remove a chloride from the coordination sphere of ReCO5, and I have done that here with AlCl3. AlCl3 will remove a Cl minus and form AlCl4 minus. Okay, so this plus Cl minus generates AlCl4 minus, and that generates a vacant coordination site. And that is occupied by ethylene. Similar situation. Now I use a stronger halogen halophile, which is Ag plus. Ag plus. So Ag forms AgI, generates a vacant coordination site, and that coordination site, let me picture that here. So this would be the vacant coordination site that is generated from here, and by adding silver added precipitates out, and then this cationic species is generated. Cationic species is now interacting with ethylene, and it forms a ethylene complex. So let me now go to a substitution reaction. Here I have removed carbon monoxide minus CO, and FeCO4 coordinates to an olefin. As I told you, carbon monoxide would love to maximize the pi bonding because it's one of the strongest pi acceptors, and diethyl fumarate. That's fumarate. Yes. No, malleate. Malic acid is the one which is cis, right? So this is dimethyl malic acid. So that's diethyl malleate, diethyl malleate. So that's the ethyl ester of malic acid, and that's forming a nice complex like this with FeCO4. Here again is a substitution reaction. So I think we have considered several synthetic methodologies. Here I am displacing one olefin with another olefin. C2H4 is displaced with CN, and I had a reason for it. And the reason for this, showing you this reaction, is that ethylene is not as good a pi acceptor as cyanoethylene. Cyanoethylene is a better pi acceptor, and so it displaces the ethylene. So this complex is formed in preference to the olefin complex. We'll comment on this a little later again. So let me just proceed quickly to co-condensation. Iron vapor can be generated by resistive heating. Resistive heating with, so that's a lot of energy. And 1,5-cyclooctadiene as a ligand. That will form the complex that I showed you in the previous slide. Sorry, I showed you the complex with nickel, but this forms a 16-electron complex now. For the same reason, steric problems are there. It can't form a 5-coordinate species. It forms only a 16-electron complex. And so it is stable only up to a low temperature. Here is a slightly different method. Here I am taking an alkyl complex and removing one hydrogen using trityl cation. So using trityl cation, I am forming a olefin, and this is now a positively charged entity. It's got a positive charge, and BF4 minus is a counterion. Okay, so this has not been listed in the main ways by which you can make complexes, but removing H minus or in another instance, I think you can add an H plus. You can do these things and generate an olefin complex. So let me end by talking about stability of metal complexes. I told you that ethylene is replaced by acrylonitrile, and this is a question of stability because this is a better pi acceptor than ethylene. As you increase the steric effects on the olefin, you form weaker and weaker complexes. If I have ethylene, that's the strongest complex. The moment you substitute it with a methyl group, the strength goes down. If you substitute it in the cis position, it's better. If you substitute in the trans position, it's extremely bad. Why is this the case? Imagine a metal and an olefin interacting with each other in this fashion. The moment you have cis substitution, you can slightly turn it so that you can move the alkyl groups away from the metal. If I have a trans substitution, whichever way I turn, one of the alkyl groups will come and bang into the metal. So cis happens to be better than trans. Mono is better than bis substitution, because mono, you can move the alkene slightly above so that the alkyl group is away from the metal. So mono substitution is better than di substitution. Di substitution, cis is better than trans. Of course, tri and tetra would be very bad. These are factors as far as steric effects are concerned. Now I come to electronic factors. Electronic factors, as long as the sterics are the same, you can think about electronic factors, and you can, for example, in the Zeiss complex, it's interesting that I can bond with the platinum in this fashion, meaning I have this is a plane in which the PtCl3 is present, and this is my olefin, right? I can have it like this, I can have it like this. So there are two positions in which the olefin can interact with the metal complex, and both of them are possible. I do not have time. I just realized that I'm running out of time. I will probably give you a supplementary lecture on the Zeiss complex binding, because it is a common problem. Common problem being whether the metal ligand interaction is like this or like this. And both of them, there are d orbitals which are available, and depending on the electronic factors, the d orbital orientation can be adjusted. The olefin orientation can be adjusted. Okay. So let me stop here, and I will continue in the next class, or in a supplementary lecture. I will give you the information regarding metal olefin complexes. You have any questions?
So could you elaborate on the cis better than trans thing?
Cis and trans, I don't have a model right now, but I forgot to make a model. Usually I make a model and explain. So this is the metal ligand plane, and this is my olefin plane. The olefin plane is perpendicular, or the olefin plane, I have kept it perpendicular, and it is facing the metal, right, in order to have the pi sigma interaction. So now if I move it in a cis fashion, I can move the ligand in such a way that the two substituents can slightly move away from the metal. Whereas if I have a trans substitution, if I move it this way, one group will affect. If I move it the other way about, the other group will come closer to the metal. So trans substitution has no option but to remain perfectly flat if the two groups are equivalent, and this is going to result in poor metal ligand interaction, or unfavorable steric interaction between the two groups. The two chlorines which are present, this is indicated here. I think I have another slide. Yeah. These two groups are interacting with the chlorine. So if I have an R group, which is if I tilt the olefin in such a way that these two hydrogens come closer and this R group is moving away, then this is relieving stress. In the case of the cis, in the trans, I cannot do this tilting. I cannot do this tilting. I'll have to keep it perpendicular close to the metal.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
Somebody's asking.
in the case of, sir, this is Ravi, sir.
Yes.
Sir, in the case of nickel zero triethylene complex, we can also use it as an example to say that the metal olefin interaction is not purely sigma. There is also pi interaction. Otherwise, in that complex, the fourth, ethylene bond can form and it can rotate either way to reduce the steric interaction. Right?
Yeah, in the case of the olefin complex in nickel, the bond, the energy evacuation for rotation is fairly small. So it is because it is rotating that it is bumping into the other ethylene. Okay.
Sir, but it can also orient themselves to reduce the steric interaction. Right?
Yes, it can orient, but it is not remaining fixed. It is that is the reason why it is completely what shall I say? It gets okay. Let's put it in another way. There is a steric factor, and to add on to it, if I have only 3 olefins, I can share the pi electron density better. So the metal actually reaches a compromise in terms of the number of olefins around it and the strength of the interaction and how they can come close to each other. So that is it is a balance of several factors that leads to the formation of the tricoordinate complex.
All right, sir.
Any other questions?
Sir, in case
sir,
of
this is perfect.
acetone, like if
Oh,
instead
sorry.
of an ethylene, if you have an acetone ethyl, do we see an increase in the rotation barrier?